The first step is the struggle and embracing yourself but struggling. People pay me to smile to other people. Okay, I'm not paid a lot, but and once you embrace who you are, like people like stop caring. They just
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the What You're About podcast with me, Chad Aboud. And this is where we meet with interesting and engaging entrepreneurs and leaders and amazing voices that you know to understand their journey and how they figured out what their natural gifts are, how they're trying to bring it into their career to lift others, build businesses, lead teams. And it was kind of through my own journey meeting so many of these people on LinkedIn and seeing their voices that it really inspired me to want to have this podcast, because what I do know is that, my journey and my story and my voice is going to connect with some people, but for many others, they're going to want to and need to hear it in a different way. Someone who maybe reflects closer to something that they did or sounds like them or feels like them. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we bring on some of the most amazing folks that I've met that are really trying to understand what they're naturally great at and to lift others with those gifts. And, I think today, no doubt we have just an incredible example of what that looks like. And, you'll know her if you're on LinkedIn, if you're in this community, if you know me, Leila El Gharbi. There's so many different things that you've done in your career, which is just still continuing to grow and shape in such a beautiful way. Just a few of the things is you're a founder, an ambassador, LegalTech, legal ops expert. You're a lawyer. You speak 5 languages, which I didn't know before this. So, can't wait to get into that. You've also lived and worked in multiple countries, in the law firm life, in legal departments, in legal tech companies. And something that I really want to learn a lot about and share with everyone watching this and listening to this is the beautiful souls on legal tech. This is an incredible community that you're leading, that you founded to create a safe and inclusive space for legal professionals. And we know we need this in this industry. And whether it's through storytelling, the empowerment, what you're doing for this community to embrace their royal energy and encourage them to be themselves and fulfill their potential. It's really special, Leila. And I've told you that, many times before, because I really, really mean it. And we're also going to talk about your launch event that you had, just a couple of days ago, before recording this. And so I can't wait to get into all of that. So thank you so much for spending this time with us, my friend.
and thank you. Wow, this is like even thank you for doing the introduction. I'm quite sure I wouldn't have done a better job myself. I tend to go all over the place, but that's my brand. So yeah, like I don't even know what to add. I'm like, okay, my whole life was covered in this.
Well, we're gonna cover it, my friend,
Yeah.
because I know there's a lot of backstory there too, and the journey that you've been on, because you share a lot of it, and the journey is incredible. Whether it's culturally, country, industry, and also within yourself. It's really remarkable to have learned about and to be watching in real time as it's unfolding right now. So take us back to the beginning. Were you from like a family from the legal industry or the tech industry? Was it really community based, an environment that you grew up in? Like, what was going on when you were a kid in terms of what you were into and what you felt really pulled to do with your time?
So it's actually a good question in the sense that I'm a third culture kid and I was born and raised in France, but my parents were immigrants and they never went like above high school. And for my dad, he never made it past school. So they were definitely not lawyers and they were not in the tech space. I'm still teaching my mom how to text. So this is where we are. So definitely not the tech savvy people. But my dad always inspired me. So him a bit more than my mom, because my mom kind of had it easy where she grew up. I mean, she's an inspiration for so many things. But for that question in particular, my dad grew up in extreme poverty, and he grew up in a biracial house. So my grandmother is black, and there is a lot of colorism in Tunisia. And his dad left the chat, as we say it now, to laugh with my parents, but very early on when he was a baby, and he had to. So I'm giving like too much information, but this is important in the sense that he didn't have like a family environment that was proper for him to grow, and on top of that, he had to leave school when he was 9 because he had to work. So, and I found it really incredible that my dad taught himself French. He came to France when he was like 19 years old, did everything, from the ground up, like, and to make sure that when he had a family, he would be able to give us like an environment where we would thrive and have everything he didn't have. So I grew up like every time I was curious about something, my dad would tell me like, "Oh yeah, take the dictionary." Like to he taught me to be curious. And the important thing as well, what he taught me networking. I didn't know yet at the time what it was, but it's funny how he grew up outside of this world where of lawyers, outside of this world of like legal tech people, of or people who grew up knowing that connections are important. I was, when I was young, I just asked my dad at some point, I'm like, oh, um, I want to do like an internship in a law firm, and I'm struggling to find one. I was like calling law firms, and he was like, okay. He was just listening to me. He was taking my demands, and he was asking me, what kind of internship are you looking for? What is the period? Is it like, during summer, etc.? And then 2 days later, he came back and he was like, call this number. I think I secured you an internship. And so he actually found me my first internship in a law firm. But I found my first one actually when I was like 12 or 13 in a court. So that's maybe like a
Wow.
story for another day. But that shows that since I was like a kid, I really, really wanted to be a lawyer. And um, my dad, in some ways, showed me that you can be like smart, you can be like hardworking, but sometimes all it takes is to ask the right people to have opportunities. And I was trying to get my first internship on my own when I was like 20 something, and I was calling, and I was never afraid to call people. But my dad, because he was a taxi driver and had like lawyers in his car, every time he had a lawyer, he would just basically do my BD, my business development, like having like all my and presenting me like an Arabic dad. My girl is brilliant. She's amazing. She studies like French law and Spanish law. She's a hard worker. She's resilient, and like he would tell my story to whoever wants to hear it. And he in just like 2 or 3 days he came back to me with an opportunity, which is incredible.
And so that ability to like build community and to connect with other people, obviously it's something that you do really well now. It's something that your dad clearly had in him. Was it something that was easy for you when you were a kid? Like, did that come naturally to you, or was that like a learned skill?
I What is funny is like I always loved people, and I always craved kind of like having people around me. But fun fact, when I was a kid, I had no friends. When I was like from maybe like 5, or like especially like primary school, like the first like, or even like the like kindergarten. I don't know what I was doing that was putting people off, but apparently I was doing it. So I really struggled to make friends. And then something changed when I was like maybe like 12 years old onwards. I managed to make friends for real, but it was really a struggle when I was a kid. But the
Did that
appetite
feel like, was that confusing
was
or
there.
like lonely as a kid? Because like you want to be around people, you like people. And so was it weird to you, or Did it just feel like you were happy to be in your world at that time?
It was like both. I think I felt the rejection was hard, and I had a twin sister, so I didn't understand why she would have friends, but I didn't, you know. So, and but I loved school so much, and I loved my teachers, so it kind of balanced it out. And every night with my twin, when we would go to sleep, we would have like kind of a meeting, and so I would have this moment where I could tell like all my stories. Obviously, nothing really happened to me, but I had like a vivid imagination. So so I still made up for it. But yeah, so it felt like kind of lonely and a bit frustrating because I felt like I had like so much, I really wanted to share. I never really wanted to be alone. I spent a lot of time dreaming and in my head, and even teachers would say she's brilliant, but she's often like, zoning out somewhere, in the moon. They used to tell me that I was living in the moon somewhere, but yeah, I was craving. I would say I was definitely craving human connection, and sometimes I cried. My little Layla version would be
And when
would
you
be a
look
bit
back
upset.
now, like you said that you're not sure why. And so, what would be your guess now? If you look back at the 5 to 12-year-old version, was it that you weren't in the right environment for how you naturally like to show up? People just didn't get you? Or was there something that changed in you around that 12 years old age that made the difference? Like, what would be your guess now about like why someone who's so outwardly driven, curious, loves to be with people, like what do you think was happening during that time? Because like probably so many people at different stages of their life feel this and probably feel like they don't know why they're not forming these connections that they really wish they were.
So I think that thing that happened when I was a kid happened to me when I was 19, and I was like bullied in the first years of universities, of uni. So there are two things. So I used to choose the wrong person, as if, we're not going to go into like psychology, as if, I was looking for that rejection, like you want to be friend with the worst person possible, but you're just like craving for that friendship. And then that person finds someone else, and suddenly, they team up. I used to have always like this pattern of choosing the wrong person to confide into, and then this person would team up with someone else, and then I would find myself alone. And 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 I guess as well, like when you are, but it's hard to say that as a kid. When you are doing something for the wrong reason, so let's say I used to be people pleaser, so I would do anything to please people, but it wouldn't be aligned with my needs. It doesn't look genuine. And I think the minute I stopped caring, people saw me more and more as a genuine person, and I attracted better people. I attracted so many things in my life, and I don't care about people who don't like my vibe. I'm not trying to bend or change for them. And I think when I was young, I was just like ready to be anything you wanted me to be. Like it's like this.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
a lot
I
of
get that.
compassion towards this younger Layla version. Like really, but that's what I say to people: when you are not aligned, and when your values, like, it feels odd when you do things for the wrong reason. No matter how good your intentions are, it just doesn't look genuine, and so people would always question what you do. But once you do it for the right reason and you align with your values, like people who question it, like you cannot please everyone, so it's okay, but
Think it's actually like it happened in a couple of different phases in your life when you were younger, but I think it's equally applicable to our careers and how we build community now. I mean, like it really resonates for me about the people pleaser kind of mentality, because for me, like I'm a very relational person. I love feeling like I'm bonding with somebody, and while it's a skill and it's a gift to be very aware of how other people feel and want to connect with them, I imagine, for you with a similar, kind of trait is that when you overuse it, it's a weakness actually, because when we become like so empathetic and so compassionate to like what we think someone else needs or wants, you actually stretch yourself like too far. You become, like you said, like out of alignment with what you really care about and who you are, and instead you're just like contorting yourself to be what other people need. And we see this like in our careers too. We choose environments where we think like, oh, I can help you, I have the ability to help you, but the values alignment of like what that organization does or what that team does, it doesn't line up with what you're really about. And so over time you actually exhaust yourself because the fit actually isn't that tight. Did that Does that feel like, not just your parts of your childhood, but like, does that resonate for your career at all too? Because that's how it felt for me for a long time.
Yes, totally. I see a shift in my career. And what's funny is like I understood that not when I was a lawyer. And I had to understand that when I had a career break, moved to the UK, and started from the bottom again and worked as a waitress, corporate receptionist, etc. And I was hired for my personal skills, for who I was, and not for like my hard skills. So it's when I had to as well like adapt to a new environment, to put my ego aside, and that taught me like, oh, like what am I doing? Because now I cannot say like, oh yeah, I'm a specialist of employment law. I just had to be like myself, and learning how to be yourself as an adult is that opportunity was obviously a hard one, but it was such a gift because it taught me to put my personality again, to see how I would adapt. And because I was not, obviously, I wouldn't be like a waitress all my life or corporate receptionist. That was not, no, that is not a career path, but it was not in my, in my ambition. So it was not the path I chose for myself. So by being in those paths that were temporary for me, helped me actually tune, you know, my empathy, my personality, and be like, okay, what is really important for me? What people actually like enjoy about me, etc. And then, like just like I had to, like to understand little by little, and I became unapologetic. But I guess before I was so like, it's a bit like, how do you call it, like the, yeah, the quicksand. Yes, so it was like I was really into my career, and so it felt like it was almost like, I couldn't really change who I was. But then suddenly I was, I was in
You
an
were
other
forced to change.
environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was forced to change and to question myself as well. And I think sometimes you just need a little push, and I had like those little push a few times in my career, even now. So, and that makes you question what you think is really fix your personality. You think you're like, oh yeah, I used to say like, I'm empathetic, and that's my strongest skill. And now I know it's a double edged sword. So
Right.
I know that it can cut me, but in the same time, like it's like it's a superpower, but can be used against me as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah, you can carve a path with it, but if you swing too heavy, you can cut yourself on the when it comes back towards you. And I totally get that. And so you're making this big shift, and like you said, it's kind of something where you chose to make this move, but then there was also, like kind of pieces that you had to solve in real time. You weren't a lawyer when you made this transition to England. And so your whole identity was changing now because you had to find other work, and that other work, like you said, relied on your personal skills. And so you're tapping back into these things that were always in you, about like wanting to be with people, understanding how to connect, understanding how to form community. And through that journey, you're also becoming really aware about how powerful it is to be yourself from some of those hard lessons you learned, with friend groups when you were a kid. And so when you were doing that and you're working, reception, and you're working at the restaurants, were you becoming really aware of like, wow, I'm like really great at connecting with people and understanding what they need and building community? And I like to learn these new roles that I'm doing, or were you just trying to survive and just tapping into whatever resources you had in you to like make the money to build this transition in London?
So it's actually, I'm just going to go back slightly in time just before I moved to the UK, because I think it will explain, because that was the haha moment I had about like my personality, and that definitely helped me survive the hard time in London. So just before I moved to the UK, so I qualified as a lawyer. I had like 3 years of experience back then in France, and I took a break for my health. And at some point, I was supposed to travel, was really frustrated, and I decided to go on a hike. That hike which was supposed to last like a week or 10 days, lasted 2 months and a half, and I walked 1,000
Wow.
miles carrying a
Wow.
backpack, and I used to be like a fashion lover, but this time I had to have only like two outfits on my backpack, like a pair of shoes, and like just like hiking um for 2 months. Yeah, that's one of the fun facts, on the surprising facts, for people who don't know me, that I actually
How did
did
it turn
walk.
from like 2 weeks to 2 months? Like, how did that even happen? Were you just like out there and you were slowly realizing like this is really important for like my mental health and I need to keep going, or what happened? Like, how does 2 weeks turn into 2 months?
Yes, it's exactly, what you say, what happened. So I did something called Camino de Santiago de Compostela, or St. James's Path, or Chemin de Compostela. I'm saying it in every language, so maybe someone will pick it up in their own language, but it's an old Christian pilgrimage. And where I started in the middle of France in the Puy-en-Velay. So, and I decided to do like 10 days worth of hiking. So it was really, I would start there, finish there, come back to Paris, celebrate my best friend's birthday, and then maybe go to Dublin or to the UK, for a couple of months to brush up my English, and then come back to France or go to Costa Rica. Anyways, very long story, but that was not the important bit. So when I started, from the very first day, when I saw that a few people I met planned to go all the way down to Spain and do the 1,000 miles, I had this idea that started coming in my head and being like, I want to do that. I want to go to the end. And bear in mind that I never hiked before. My feet were aching from day
Wow.
one. I hurt my ankle. I was the only curvy girl in this path. And so I was really out of space, and I come from a Muslim background, and so I was really like that odd person in that path. But I grew up anyways in a Catholic. I went to Catholic private schools when I was a kid. So I was not. I always loved churches, and I'm like very spiritual. So I have like kind of a like so that was definitely like in the vibe I was looking for. But I didn't know that I would start walking, and it's like there was like a force that carried me till the end, because believe me, I was so much in pain, but it's like I knew I had to go to the end of that path. I needed it for my mental health, and that was the first moment in my life I was selfish. I decided to do things for me, because my parents, the society, everyone was like, when are you coming back? When are you coming back to work? What are you doing? And this time I was just like, you know what? I'm doing that for me. And I couldn't stop, like, and I had the chance that my mother understood, my sister understood and supported me financially to finish the trip. So that was like my family, my friends, everyone came together to help me go through that journey. And I'm a twin, and for the first time people start knowing me because of me, Leila. And I was not Leila the lawyer, I was not Leila anything, I was just Leila, and not Leila the twin either. And so it's like I discovered myself in the same time as people discovered me. And I was telling my stories about my health journey, and like all these things, and people were shocked. Like, it's like when you internalize so much what you're going through, that you don't even know that actually it was resilient, actually it was being brave, actually like what you think is normal is actually like a breath of fresh air for so many people. And it was the first time I saw it through different eyes. And because I had nothing to prove, we were all like, like hiking, and for 2 months you get to know like people. And I went on my own. One thing as well, I just took a backpack, didn't know where I was going, like I never did it before. And I met people along the way that became friends. And just like a few weeks ago, I read like a letter that one of these friends like wrote me after the Camino, and that was really emotional for me because it maybe we touch base about that. So that I had like very bad health issues just like a few years ago before that Camino, which happened like exactly 5 years ago. So I used to have asthma when I was a kid, came back when I was an adult, but came back really strongly. And at some point, I needed an assistant to breathe. So I had to plug myself to oxygen around like 3 times a day. Almost died because of, like something that happened between my
Wow.
lung and my heart. So, and that for
Wow.
me, it's only in Camino that I discovered like, oh yeah, actually shit. Sorry, I'm not sure it's politically correct to say like words, but so I was like, oh my god, actually something really bad happened. And I remember going back to work, being really really sorry that I would miss work for a bit, but maybe as well like this is one of my why for Beautiful Souls, that we put our we put even our health last. Some people are almost dying, but they feel like really guilty that they're not able to go to work. And so that Camino like just put things into perspective again. And when I was able to hike and to cross that mountain, which was like 1,200 meters like of ascension, and I managed to do it, I actually cried on top of that mountain when I did it. And I was like, okay, so now by listening to myself, by taking my time, by, like taking all these moments, all this month, I managed to do something that a few years ago I would never have been able to do so. And I'm taking care of my health and I'm discovering myself. So obviously when I arrived in London, like, so I came back from this journey on the 24th of August. On the 6th of September, I was in the Eurostar from Paris to London. So the mentality I had when I moved to the UK was really different than if I didn't do that path, and that's why before answering that question, I wanted to about touch touch upon this topic because that journey really was like life changing for me. Um, and when I started in the UK and I was a waitress or corporate receptionist, so I had to wake up at 6 a.m. in order to receive a call to and hope that someone would give me an assignment, I was happy. I was like, can you imagine? People pay me to smile to other people. Okay, I'm not paid a lot, but I am paid to make people's day brighter. It's how I saw it being a receptionist. And same for being a brand ambassador. And when I was a waitress, I was just really stressed about um, my balance. I had like very terrible balance. So, with the drinks. So I made it head waitress in just 2 weeks in a luxury
Wow.
restaurant where some people were waited like 1 year or 2 years to have the promotion, and I was terrible with carrying drinks. But I just loved people so much that they saw me as someone who can like upsell to clients. That is really good. But
Yeah,
I
of
was
course.
really like terrible, so I needed an usher every time. So it's like, oh, Layla needs her assistant, and people would tell me, oh my god, Layla, you're a lawyer, you're too good to be a waitress. And I was like, have you seen me waitressing first? Like, have you seen me carrying drinks? So I'm like, I'm not too good. It's just like about once you put your ego aside, there is not like such a thing of like, oh yeah, this job is too good or too bad for you. And you see, it's all about perspective. I just decided, I guess a few years ago, that whatever opportunity I have, I see it as an opportunity. I don't, and I guess it's as well like maybe it's one of my gifts because I really see that as a blessing, that I'm able to see life through lenses that allow me to see things positively. And I know it's not a given for everyone. So I'm always like saying to people, I feel blessed because it's not something I had to work on. It's something that came to me, and that, but maybe I can take some merits because no matter what life threw at me, and life threw me a lot of shit, if I'm allowed to say so, because there is no other word that I can find. I I still managed to keep that perspective on life. And so, but it's a gift. I'm not gonna lie. Some people don't have it and find it difficult, and it's a daily job to remember. But for me, it's like, instead of even like, not even gratitude, I just see things and I'm like, oh wow, this is amazing. My I think it's the word I say the most, like, oh my god, this is so amazing, oh my god, this is so beautiful. And I think it.
Yeah, I
So I
think that
guess, yeah.
positivity brings people to you. Like it's because I think it's very contagious, right? Like people know it's very authentic to you that you see so much possibility, and others want some of that too, right? Like people want to feel like there's a lot of possibility, that there's something new out there for them, in them, that they can bring out. And I think being around you is something that gives people a lot of hope. You know, when I think about what you're naturally great at, like, okay, you love being around people, you're very empathetic, but you're also independently minded. And you have, spoken a few times about, and I relate to this, about people pleasing. But I think that's a bit different, because I think people pleasing is just like we said, that double-edged sword of being very empathetic. I think you're very independently minded in terms of, like, when you see something that you feel is important and worth doing, like, you go and do it. And that ranges from, like, the style and the way you carry yourself to the events that you decide matter to the industry to put on, and the way that you've kept carving your career to push it towards something that helps the legal industry grow. Like, you're very independently minded that way. And so I'm curious, after you move to London and you do find your way into the legal industry, how did that feel? Like, you had come to know yourself, you had discovered some of these gifts through your big trek and through some of the jobs you were doing when you first got to London. You get back into the legal industry. Did you find that you were back into people pleasing mode, or were you still like using your gifts to like build all these relationships and bring people together?
I think I was not in the people pleasing mode, but I was embracing the gift, as you mentioned. I was recognizing that I had this thing of bringing up positivity. And I even like remember in one of my jobs, there was a girl who used to put like daily quotes, positive quotes, and I started like writing as well, like down on that board, like daily positive quotes as well. Like it was like Leila and Beth, like board. People knew that they would find like positive quotes there. So, and I guess because I in the UK I had to start from scratch. So I couldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm the best lawyer you're gonna have, or trying to compete with other UK solicitor. I would obviously apply for global companies because I know that my skills would be appreciated. And I had to accept as well, like to take a huge cut on, like on the pay, like in the very beginning. So I guess I was trying to learn, and I just used that, this curiosity to uh, go and see the GC, see the CFO. It made me even a better communicant because, like the thing about commercial awareness, like suddenly I'm like, yeah, like it's normal. And because I was contracting and I was a foreigner, so automatically I was doing all these extra steps, I guess more than even in France, to understand a bit more the business, to understand a bit more my team, to understand a bit more the different stakeholder in the company. And so that put me like that newly found, like not newly found, more like that awareness about my gifts and about my qualities made me better. And even on my videos that I used to do for candidate profile, I was like, oh, and I am full of positive energy, like, so I would end up my videos like that. Like, it's like I knew that it was like something good. I don't know like what I was thinking, because now when I see it, I'm like, oh my god, this is so cute that I thought it was important for me to put in a 1 minute video. But I always would end up my video saying that, and and I would make sure that when I go to interviews, I have my curly hair, that I have my red lipstick, that I have like something that show a bit of my personality, because I wanted to be happy in a role. It's like, without even, it's not like, it was not a strategy, but in my head, I was like, I'm going to be myself at any cost. And so I need to show people who I am. And so no matter the job I'm doing, or no matter how much I'm paid, I'm just going to show a bit of my personality. And it worked, because then, like, it helped me like really, like, create these connections, like network better, bringing opportunities more to myself. So yeah, so without knowing it, like, now that you asking me the question, I'm like, yeah, this girl already knew 5 years ago. She was like, nope, I'm gonna be myself. And something that surprised me is the same issues I used to see in France, I saw them as well in the UK, and like other like international companies. It's just that, and I guess that was like a main motivator for Beautiful Souls, is that no matter where you are, the the issues we have in in the legal industry, or globally anyways in the world, are actually global. Everyone is having them. Everyone is having like resistance to change. We're struggling with diversity and inclusion. We're struggling with so many topics, and with people being themselves. Because in all the company, they were like, oh yeah, Leila, it's so great, you a breath of fresh air. And I'm like, but you too can be, like, there is enough air for all of us, we can be like
Yeah.
a freaking tornado in here, so yeah, I guess it's
That's something that you're incredible at, right? And you've done this, by storm over the last like year or two on LinkedIn, but also at events in real life. And I think this kind of independence thread, this desire and the gift to realize that like you're special as you are, and to bring that out not only for yourself but as an encouragement to other people. Now when we see you go to the events and you're giving out the tiaras and you've got all these incredible outfits on and you're the life of the event, and that's there it is. There it is, the famous tiara. But this is not always easy. Like, it's not always easy for other people. And I think sometimes we think that it was always easy for the person doing it, right? But like, it also takes a lot of courage and commitment and determination to be yourself and to stand out exactly as you are. And so when you first started showing up to events, because I know that you've shared with me, it wasn't always the case that you wore these like incredibly interesting and creative outfits, and you didn't always have the tiaras. Like, how did you decide, okay, I'm going to these events in clothes that don't feel like me and it's uncomfortable, but if I really show who I am, I'm going to stand out a lot. How did you have the courage to decide to do that?
I think is because as well, like, I'm a plus size. I'm one of the curvy legal professionals, and this is important to say, because um when you are curvy, and you are, first of all, when you are going to events for the first time, no matter your size, you are always worried uh to respect or not, like the like, if there is, how do you call it, like, it's like I have the word, but I'm losing it. If there is like a dress code, okay. So I see that it's a common question among people. What's the dress code? And so when I went to my first event, I was like, how am I going to dress up? And I knew I was like differently bodied than a lot of my colleagues. And I just decided to go for a classic look. So black blazer, black dress, maybe like even like black tights and black shoes, like the total like black look, because I didn't want to look out of place or to look like, oh, it's too much. And so I would say like it took me like a few years, to maybe like a year or a bit less, maybe not, because I'm a fast learner, to understand that I didn't care. But right now I'm more like wearing things like it's been a year that I'm wearing like clothes that I consider are like statement outfits. So when I go to events, I make that conscious effort to wear color. I don't want to be, like to look like I'm sorry, to be there, or I want to hide. I don't want that. And I guess it started in the beginning. I was a bit shy, not knowing what to dress and like what was the dress code, like for people my size, and then stopping. I stopped caring, and I guess it started with conversations. Like when you bring your personality. I brought my personality first to the table. I brought up like very hard topics, but for me it was not hard. I spoke a lot about mental health and started random conversations with people. So I guess the first step was to make sure I was bringing up my personality, and then the second one, the more I was at ease with who I was, the more I would bring my personality in my clothes and my style and embrace who I was. Because on my personal life, I when I started putting on weight because of some health issues, I made a promise to myself to enjoy my body where it was, because I lost too much time like being more worried about my weight than about my health. And so like, my treatment saved my life. So, like it's okay, maybe I put some weight, but at least it helped me breathe. So I used to dress like really colorfully and unapologetically, and like never made it an issue in my personal life. But in my professional life, I had this kind of voice telling me like, oh, and especially from my education, from my parents, or from the feedback I received when I was younger, and I was not even that curvy. That people would tell me, you know what, curvy people are lazy, fat people are this, are that, and they tell you, oh, wear this, it covers more. And now I'm like, I'm not gonna cover it. Anyways, you're gonna see it, so let me embrace it, like, so I'm not gonna cover that body that is helping me through this life for and once you embrace who you are, like people like stop caring. They just like give you compliments about your outfits. They're giving you compliments about your energy, and no one cares about like your size. Like it's like, anyways, it's there. Whether I wear like large stuff, or I wear things that makes me happy. And I'm not telling people like, oh yeah, you should wear what I'm wearing. I'm even discovering that I love colors. Like wearing charas. Like a few years ago, you would have told me, oh, you would go to events with charas. I would have been like, oh no, no. I'm enough sparkle for the world. I would say like my personality is enough sparkles, but now it just feels naturally. Maybe not the chara, but the rest feel really natural for me to I'm doing it on purpose. It's more that, you start and you do things by accident, and now I know I'm making it to myself and for others. It's like kind of a statement. Every time I feel like, oh my god, I don't feel really like it today, I'm not feeling great, I'm like, no, you have to not fake it till you make it. But I need to feel like I'm looking good in order to as well like communicate better. And it's all about, and skinny people have the same issues. Like we all have that same issue of struggling to know if we fit or not dress code, if we fit or not expectations, if it's too much or not. And now my thing is like, it's never too much. There is not enough sparkles in this world. There is not enough colors, and I'm trying to find my little own pockets of joys. And pockets of joy are found in colorful outfits, are found in colorful things. So I'm creating a full package of joy for whoever wants.
You're it's like an inspiration for other people, and whether or not they want to be as bold with their full color choices at events as you, or they take a piece of that and find something that's smaller for them that works for them. I think what's really incredible is that you tried to discover it. Like it didn't go from wearing like a classic black suit to like, the tiaras and you taking pictures with so many people that want to be with you wearing the tiaras. Like there's a journey there. And so I think for folks listening and watching that are thinking like, I've got some personality that I want to bring out. It may not look exactly like how Leila does it, but I've got my own version. How do I get there? I I think something special to take away from Leila's journey is that it's like these little tests of feeling like, okay, could it just be red lipstick, or could it be this accessory, like something small that makes you feel like, okay, is this reflective of me? And the other thing that you'll find, and you did such a great job of sharing this, is that we think when we don't see something that it's not welcome. Like when we see a sea of classic suits, we think that color's not welcome. And then if we wear it, then it's going to throw everyone off and no one's going to like it. When what, has happened in your journey is it's almost as if people were waiting for someone to just be like really authentically, creatively themselves in the way that they show up, personality and the look and everything. And when people see that, that's why they keep telling you it's a breath of fresh air, because they've been breathing stale air and they've actually been waiting for the inspiration. It's not that it wasn't wanted. And I think that's something that we just don't understand until either we see someone like you do it or we try it ourselves. And I've seen this in many different pieces of my life, where it's like, until I did something or saw someone else do it, I thought that it wasn't welcome. And I think that's what you're doing for so many in, the tech industry and the legal industry, is showing them like it is possible to be more of yourself in how you show up. It's an incredible impact to have. How does it feel to have gone through that journey over the last like couple of years, and how you've shared it on social media? Like, how does it feel, to be here today, looking back over the last few years?
I think it's when I know how much growth happened, because I guess when you are in the day to day, you just forget that, like just a few years ago, you were just. I was never really hiding my body. It's more like the color I was choosing, especially when I was going to official events, I would struggle and be like, oh my God, like what is my most classical piece, but that still fits my body perfectly. And now I'm more like, oh, what is the best statement piece? What is the message? It's more that, what is the message I want to carry today? So it's being more intentional, but and knowing that now I'm having kind of an influence, and not like by being like, oh yeah, I'm the the best influencer on this world. No, I mean I'm a queen, but it's more about seeing that by looking back, I'm like, I was inspired in my journey by people who didn't look like me but who were bold. And I think of Olga Vimak, I think of Kat Casey, that were like, like very colorful outfits. And I didn't want to start like a thing for being like, oh yeah, like other people like can do it. But it just encourages me to see like leadership, like women who succeeded to be themselves. And it kind of gives you like open you the way of doing that. And I can say as well, like what helped me going is the encouragement from people. Once I started being myself, people were like, oh my God, this is amazing, oh wow, you're bold. And then like you just encourage. And sometimes it's that, like you start something without knowing that you started something, and people like keep on encouraging you, and you're like, oh, then I can allow myself to be even more myself. And so I guess like what I'm by looking back, I think I see like a lot of growth, and I have a lot of compassion towards that person who was told a lot of time in her life that I had like to fit into something, or like I shouldn't be too loud, I shouldn't be too this, and like and so now I just feel like there is no limit when you want to be yourself. Like if you want to wear crowns to events, or even to you with yourself when you're having a bad day, no one can judge you if you don't give that judgment. If you take off the judgment towards yourself, then actually people like see positive things. Like people used to tell me, like the first time I brought a crown in an event, they used to tell me, oh, happy birthday. And then I was like, oh no, it's not my birthday. And they were like, what are you celebrating? And I was like, life. And so like they were actually really surprised, and then they became curious, and it becomes like my child revolution started like that. It was just about, um once I embraced who I was fully. It just, I don't know how it happened. I still feel
Well, I
like,
think one thing that I tell a lot of people when in like coaching or consulting to them is that when you tell the world what you're about, it's a lot easier for folks who want that energy to find you. Like, how are people supposed to know what you deeply care about and how you like to express yourself if you don't do it? Right. But like when you do it, when you naturally are yourself and you share it, and there's a lot of courage to get there. But when you do it, well, it's like a beacon to everyone who wants to be like more creative and more connected and feel that positive energy. Is they know exactly where to go, right? They look at you and they think like this is the person. And so I think a lot of times we think about whether it's job opportunities or trying to get clients, there's like this big top of funnel and we're trying to make the funnel as big as possible to get the most amount of opportunities in, when really what I've come to in my journey is being really getting really clear and confident about what you're about and then sharing that. And yeah, like maybe the top of funnel that you thought was here comes a little bit tighter, but the outside was just noise all the time anyway. It wasn't a true great connection or opportunity that was going to happen. But what you do when you shrink that top of funnel because you're very clear about who you are, the conversion of like great fit opportunities and connections and roles and clients, they find you because you're really clear about what you're about. I found that in my career working in organizations, having my own business, is that the clearer I am about this is what I care about and this is what really matters to me, well then people find you who need that support. And that's what you do, Leila, is that like you show up in places and you let people know you can be who you are. And that really, really matters, even when we don't know yet how much it matters because we just see a sea of black suits. But that's what you're doing. So tell us a little bit about, Beautiful Souls. This is an incredible community that you're building. You just launched your first in-person event. Tell us all about it, what you're building, what you're doing, where it's going.
yes. And just before I jump into Beautiful Souls, because I don't want to forget that, and I wanted to say it earlier, but my brain is just playing tricks with me. But speaking about earlier, like gifts and outfits, and what you just said before jumping into Beautiful Souls, is that you are one of the first who helped me see that it was a gift, not because we knew each other personally, but when you started posting about natural gifts, is when I realized that what I had was a gift. I think it's like you put into words exactly what I was thinking in my head, and that like followed me like for a little while. And I think this pushed me as well like towards like Beautiful Souls, because I remember this post earlier this year just before I started Beautiful Souls, where you mentioned that if like people want to be happy and aligned, they should do like something, first of all find what their true gift is, and then like maybe find a job that have like 70, using 70% of time, like these gifts, and then the rest, obviously no one can find a job where 100% of thing they enjoy doing. And I think that like came right on time when I was going through a career transition, and that made me think a lot. And as well, like just talking about style, I know that for a fact, I mean, like in a lot of people on LinkedIn, your shirts are a statement. Like, can we talk about this flamingo and this like all shirts, all kind of shirts that you have? Like, because we cannot speak about fashion without talking about your impeccable style, Chad. I'm sorry, but like
I
now
appreciate you.
my brain is coming back to life and be like, oh yeah, like
It's every a lot of what you said like really resonated for me. There was a long period of time in the beginning of my career where I was good at being a lawyer, but I wasn't really being myself. I was doing the best version of mimicking what I saw because that was the definition of success for me. I basically looked ahead at other people who had continued getting the bigger titles, had continued making bigger money, who were building their clients. And I was like, okay, what do they look like? What do they sound like? How are they operating? I'll just do that. I didn't really feel like myself, but I didn't really know that I needed to or should be trying to feel like myself. And it was only after doing that race for like 5 years of trying to be someone else that I think I got a bit exhausted because it was taking a lot of energy. I was still doing a good job of it, but it's hard to pretend to be somebody else for a long time. And what happened was the natural part of me, this like empathetic, a little bit like more, creative version started slipping out like by accident. I just couldn't hold it back anymore. I was too tired. And when I did that, the connection that I started making with people felt so much more real. And the way that I mean that is that like the way that they would respond to me, their tone, their physical cues, their focus, it was very different than when I was just trying to be someone else. And so when I started seeing these indications, I was like, whoa, I feel better. Wow, my connections seem more real. What's going on? That's when I started saying to myself, like, probably the way you'll be most successful isn't by being a mimic of someone else. You're gonna have to find your own way. And so I was still in suits, but I was starting to like get the suits a little bit tailored more and get the ties a little bit more exciting. And then, I started getting the ascot game going, and I was still like in suits, but I was trying to find these little things. And so I'd have really colorful pocket squares or really interesting ties, tie clip, whatever it was. And that journey just continued where, now, yeah, okay, it's in the shirts and like, you know, it's just that it makes me feel like I'm closer to knowing myself. You said this earlier that like you want to dress in a way that feels natural for you, that feels right for you because you feel better. And I think for folks is that definition of feel better to me doesn't mean like you look cooler. It means you feel like you're closer to knowing who you are. I remember one time after I switched out of wearing all of these like classic suits and started wearing like my own thing, and I was like growing my hair out more, and I went to this wedding, and one of my friends who knew me from like that law firm world said like, what happened to you? And I think my partner, who was always encouraging me to be more creative because she's very creative, she was just like, I just encouraged him to come out of his shell, and this is what came out. So it's just like, it's just the more real version of me coming out. And so your story really resonated with me about, how I felt too, choosing clothes and styles that just feel more like you. It's like telling the world, this is who I am.
Yeah, and it's just like simple things. It sounds like people think like, oh yeah, outfits, but even I see the more I became myself, I discovered I was creative. I really thought for a long time that I was smart, I was really logical, and I was, had like this ability to connect things together. But I didn't think I was creative, and now I'm able to create like things for carousels on LinkedIn, be able to create visuals, and even in my life, I became more creative. So it's the more you embrace who you are, you even like can find qualities or skills that you never knew you had, or you kind of put to the back for a while, because these qualities,
Yeah.
as you mentioned as well, I remember it was not really celebrated in my family, or because I'm my parents are immigrants, so they were really proud of me when I said I want to be a lawyer, and when I was really in the path of becoming one, and then became one. But then like it took a while. My mom knows about my beautiful souls venture, and she's encouraging me now. But she's like, oh, but why? How do you make money? So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
always like that thing where people don't value empathy because they don't value creativity, because it doesn't pay the bills. But once you become yourself, I guess it's what you do as well with the coaching. It's like you can find opportunities that obviously help you pay the bills, and at the same time like help you be aligned with yourself, and hopefully
Yeah.
like opportunities come. I'm in the middle of uh, obviously like creating my path, but it's obviously like difficult, like right now I'm like, but I'm just wondering to myself, oh, am I in the right path? Am I doing the right thing? But in the same time, it makes sense. I I don't want to be somewhere else than where I am right now, because I've never been as happy and aligned with who I am. And so I think it's really important. The first step is the struggle, and like embracing yourself but struggling. And then hopefully, like there is a second step and third step, which is like, like thriving, and first the second step having opportunities, and then is like thriving, and like never looking
Well, and
back.
I think those opportunities are already like percolating in the background before you know they're
Yeah.
happening, because everyone's watching you and watching the impact you're creating. And so, when you're in it and you're building it, it feels like the future is so uncertain. But really, there's like a world of people that are watching you make this impact. And so many of them are thinking, like, man, I would love to do something with Leila. And it just takes the
Mm.
time for those opportunities to like become clearer. So
Yeah.
tell us then, like tell us all about the launch event that you had and the purpose and the mission of Beautiful Souls.
So I started Beautiful Souls because I wanted to celebrate humans, people in general in the legal industry. And I called it Beautiful Souls because in LegalTech, because it's really inclusive. Normally everyone has a soul, even the very dodgy ones. But so and in the beginning, I really wanted to celebrate women, but then I was like, no, it's not enough. I want to celebrate people. I want to celebrate humans. Everyone has a story to tell. And I guess I told you that. So it's funny that we arrived towards the end, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was the real story. But I have like two things that made my why behind Beautiful Soul. So the first one, which is less personal, is that no matter where I walked, I always saw that people were there was like a bit of distance. People were not really themselves, and a lot of people I met mm, told me, because I had this skill of asking questions, and people like tell me the life story, and that's the power of being an empath. You just attract people towards you. And so most of the time people were telling me, oh, I don't normally get along with lawyers, I don't fit in the box, I'm not really happy. So like after the fake, like, oh yeah, I love my job, I'm saying like a lot of people are loving their job, don't get me wrong, but it's like there is always like this kind of misfit, like this kind of thing where something is not really right. I don't really feel like myself. And I guess that was like the main thing. And I observed so much like issues with mental health, with the lack of inclusion. Like we talk more and more about diversity, but what is really changing? How do we make sure that like people we feel really included? And like, so what initiatives can matter? And the so that was like the first thing. And I worked in France, I worked in the UK, I worked in global companies, and I was like, it's crazy that the problem is the same everywhere. It's
Yeah.
like it might be a
Yeah.
bit the conversation might be a bit more advanced in some countries. There is a bit more awareness around diversity in the UK and the US than there is in France. In France we just like pretend it doesn't exist. Like there are more conversations around like mental health. There are more things, but there is still this lack of action from from the companies. Like, what do we do? How do we make sure that we let people tell their stories? And most of the time, like it's as simple as that. It starts with the lack of examples, and like there are only a few that manage to get their voice out, but not it's not like given to the main to, to everyone. Like it's like there is one poster person per company if there is one, that will be like the
Yeah.
diversity
Yeah.
poster or inclusion, but there will be no other one. But it's still like a good start. So I really wanted to give a voice to everyone, and I wanted to start it being like, um I wanted this initiative to be by the community, for the community, by the community, and not just for me. I just didn't want to just tell my story, because my story, some people relate, some will not, and I'm not representing the full spectrum of individuals. I might be like such an amazing queen, but I'm not ticking all the boxes in this world. So and then the second one, and here there is a trigger warning. is very much more personal. So um, about now, I guess like 12 years ago. So it's been a while. My cousin committed suicide. So we all instead of saying she committed suicide, she lost her life to suicide, because it's literally like
Yeah.
life failed her. And I think it took me a while to realize, and because in my family it's a very like taboo subject. But to give a bit of context, as I mentioned, my dad is mixed race, but this girl as well, so she was dark, um, um, incredibly beautiful, Ines. That's her name. And so Ines grew up with her dad being in prison, her mom trying to do what she can, and she had diabetes like since she was a kid. Then she had the cortisone treatment that kind of modified the structure of her face, and she didn't have like a very high education, and she was like approaching her 20s, and she was in her very very early 20s, and she thought life was ending for her, because after 18 everyone asks you, oh, when are you getting married, like it's like, no, you have your diploma from high school, and then that's it, in Tunisia especially at that time. And there was like no much like there was no access to internet, or like examples that she could look up to. And as a black woman in Tunisia, where colorism was quite strong, I love my country, but it's a fact. If I'm talking about diversity and inclusion, we have to look as well like inwards. And so she didn't have any example of a successful black woman, and plus with the disease, and she had like another one. I know about diabetes, but I don't know about the second one. And so she felt disabled and with no much options. And at some point she just thought, that's it, there is nothing for me, I'm a burden for my parents, I'm a burden for this world, and there is nothing to look up to. And where I feel that we failed as a family and as a society is that we we didn't see the sign, we didn't see that all she needed was examples and encouragement of people who were in her shoes and like succeeded, and she didn't have any of that. And because I could speak, but I was in France, I was like one of the lucky ones, I escaped. I was born in France, like, so it's like it's not the same. And I'm light, I'm not like my mom is very white, so my skin is not that dark. And so it was like all these things where, even though we had like some conversations, I think when I was seeing her during summer, it was never that deep. And I guess we were from very different worlds. And so that came as a shock when we knew that she lost her life. And we never really spoke about it as a family. My parents just told me the reasons why she ended her life, and that was it. That was like, yeah, we're not going to talk about it anymore. And and I think after a while, like a few years back, when I was struggling as well, like with stress, and when I was starting to see that so many people that I know around me, like almost like committed suicide, or I started to understand that there is so much power in storytelling. There is so much power in being an empath and taking the time to listen to someone. Because in my life, unfortunately, I met a few people who were really struggling, and I know that sometimes it's one conversation that saved their life. It's like being there for a little while, for and so it's sometimes it's all you need. And so that's why I guess I wanted to give a voice to people, because most of the time people say like, oh, I don't want to share my story, it's not going to change anything. But who knows? You never know who your story is going to impact. You never know that. You never know like who's going
Yeah.
to listen to what you're doing and know where you come from and be like, oh my god, I can do it too. And it's
That's
as well like,
it's a big impact that you're having, my
yeah.
friend. Like, it's bringing people together, and it's incredible how you're lifting people up and allowing them to be themselves. And so I think it's so special that you're doing it. And you just had your big launch event, a couple days before we're recording this, and the pictures are all over LinkedIn, and you can see the impact that you're having. And so, I just wanted to let you know like how important it is, the impact that you're having. And I have no doubt that it's just going to keep growing. The events are going to keep growing in other cities, in other countries. And it's extremely special, my friend. I'm just so glad that you're bringing your creativity, the community, your love of people, your empathy, your independence, so that everyone can learn from that and take inspiration from that and those that attend the events. And so, you do that with Beautiful Souls. You do that on LinkedIn. You've been learning this your entire career of using your gifts. And, I think that you're just such a special example of like what happens when you know what you're about. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing the journey, sharing what you're building, how you're lifting the community. Is just so special. And I know that everyone who watched this and listened to this will take that inspiration from you. So, thank you so much, my friend, for spending this time with us, for sharing this. And I can't wait to keep celebrating you as you continue to build your events.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you for all you do. You are definitely an amazing, beautiful soul. If I had to choose like a community ambassador for my next Beautiful Souls event in Toronto, I would definitely choose you. There would be no other person I would give that mission to. But thank you for being such a support, and you're definitely changing people's life. If you think I'm having an impact, and I know now that I am, no, I'm not going to downplay it. Come on, Queen. But you definitely are having an impact, and you had like since almost day one when I started like following you. So people are changing the way of thinking or recognizing and acknowledging the gifts because you decided to speak up and
Thank you.
and make people aware of it. So
I appreciate you.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
for that, my friend. And for everyone that listened, I'm confident that this would have inspired you in one way or another. But if you feel like it is meant for someone that then I hope that you share that with them. And feel free to tag Leila, myself, with something that you took from it or a question that you have, and hopefully that we can answer that or point you in a direction based on our experience. And so, thank you so much for joining us. And Leila, to you and to everyone that listened and watched, and hope you all have an incredible day.